short walk from the surrounding towns and roads lies College Reservoir, a haven well known for its waterfowl and arboreal bird species. But, as brilliant as these may be, we are here to look for a group of species with a reputation unlike any other. For as the sun sets and the blanket of dusk falls over the water, furrier winged wonders begin to emerge. You may only hear the sound of your footsteps as you walk the dark path round the reservoir, but don't be fooled. It may seem quiet, but the sky is heavy with action. Bats! These tiny little creatures are perhaps some of the most misunderstood on planet Earth. Heavily demonised, the bat is a sweet little mammal who likes to fly, chat and eat insects. We have 17 species of breeding bats in the UK, each varying in shape and size. Our bats feast on a variety of insects. However, in order to eat these insects, they must first catch them. Contrary to popular belief, bats are not blind. However, like human eyes, they can't see very well in the dark, so instead they use echolocation. Essentially, the bat screams as it flies. Listening to these calls gives us an idea of the bat's behaviour. For example, individuals will let out a feeding buzz as they get closer to their prey. These same calls give us an idea of the bats we have dancing around our skies, since species calls will vary in peak frequency and waveform. However, these calls can't be heard without aid, so we use bat detectors to help us determine them. One of the most notable calls you'll hear is the common pipistrelle, which many have likened to the slapping of a wet fish. By tuning into different frequencies on the detector, you can determine which species are present. For example, pipistrelles have a common waveform, but they vary in frequency. Common pipistrelles typically have a peak frequency of around 45 Hz, while soprano pipistrelles have a frequency of around 55 Hz, and enthusiast pipistrelles are around 38 Hz. The noctral is our biggest UK bat and calls at around peak frequency of 25 Hz. However, their calls can be low enough to be heard by children and some adults, and make a chip-chop sound on the bat detector. Turning the dial back up to 50 Hz, we hear a different sort of slapping. The Dor Benton's bat feeds on insects above bodies of water. Sometimes they'll scoop the insects off the surface using their tail. They are typically found around coastal areas and reservoirs such as this. Despite their charisma, bats are still heavily persecuted in the UK, and many species are suffering due to habitat loss. We talked to our resident expert in all things bats to learn more about UK species and the problems they're currently facing. Hi, so do you want to introduce yourself and your relationship to bats?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Maisie and I am a big bat fan. I have studied bats for my degrees. I have worked for the Bat Conservation Trust and I'm now currently working at the university as a research technician. I'm studying the effects of artificial light at night on nocturnal animals. One of these species groups is bats that we're looking at. So.
Very cool.
Thank you.
So what sort of species of bats do we have in the UK?
Okay, so we have consistently about 17 different species of bat in the UK. Occasionally we do get a few bats that come over from Europe and things, and these bats are all mostly insectivorous species. They're entirely insectivorous species, I should say. So yeah, so they control our crop pests in the UK, they control our mosquitoes and the moths whose caterpillars will eat our crops and things. So yeah, we're really grateful for our bats in the UK. They're good important part of the ecosystem.
So what bats will we be getting here tonight?
Okay, so in this particular location, in previous bat walks and things, I have detected around 4 different species consistently. There may be more, there is probably likely more. So we do get the common pipistrelle. They're very widespread throughout the UK, and they are prolific insect eaters, and they're really aerodynamic. We have the soprano pipistrelle, which is similar to the common pipistrelle. They're slightly smaller, and they are called soprano pipistrelles because they've got a slightly higher pitched squeak, which is quite cool. We also have the Nathusius pipistrelles here, and they are really cool because they can travel really long distances. They are like chunky pipistrelles. And we also have Daubenton's bats, and they are really special. They're also known as the water bat sometimes because they fly very low and fast across the water, catching insects on the water surface. So they're quite cool, particularly when their tails stream in the water and you get that really nice rippling effect. And there may be more species, so there could be more different Myotis species. So they're the family that Daubenton's bats are in. And the thing is about their family is that they all sound very similar. So it's hard to tell them apart, but there is very likely lots of different species here because it is great habitat.
So is sound the way you normally tell bats apart?
Yeah, so you can do it a couple ways. Sound is definitely a way. So I've brought my heterodyne bat detector with me. So this is one of the most commonly available bat detectors, and it's really simple and easy for anyone to use. You turn the dial to the frequency that you want to particularly tune into, and so that the species that sounds clearest at different frequencies can help you pick them apart. Of course, there are some species that, you know, like the Myotis species, that are really hard to tell apart because they all sound the same through this thing and they're all at the same frequency. But if you're wanting to tell the difference between a common pip and a soprano pip, this is something that's really easy to use. And there can be other ways. You can, other sort of fancy detectors that give you things like spectrograms and stuff like that. But if you're starting off, it's well worth investing in one of these. They are very cool. You can also tell them apart if you can see them. If it's quite a clear night, you can tell them apart by the way they're flying. So as I mentioned before, the Daubenton's bats will be very low and fast and drift kind of very in straight lines across the water, whereas pipistrelles will be more erratic. And you can get an idea of size sometimes too, although bats do fly very quickly. So sometimes it's like, woof, what on earth was that? I can't see it. But yeah, sound and a bit of sight is usually the best way.
So in terms of the way they hunt, they use echolocation, like hunting at night. So considering all that, there's not really much of a need for eyesight. So are bats blind or?
Well, contrary to popular belief, they are not blind. Their eyes do still serve a purpose in the way that it does help to see things. So whilst their ears and their echolocation system is their sort of main way of navigating, they do still have eyesight, and it is actually pretty good. There's still a lot of science to be done exactly how good, but in certain fruit-eating species that we don't get in the UK but are found kind of across the globe, their eyesight has actually been shown to be really good, because obviously when you're flying at night you're wanting big, strong eyes that can see the ripe fruit in the trees. So yeah, bats definitely not blind, and their eyes do still serve a purpose, but yeah, their main skill really is echolocation.
How are bats doing in the UK? Are they fairly stable in their population, or is it not looking so good?
Well, so I'd say in the UK, so there's this really cool project that I really recommend people get involved with, which is the National Bat Monitoring Programme. If you look that up online, it'll take you to the Bat Conservation Trust's website, and anyone can get involved at any level of expertise. And that is what they are using to track population trends around the UK. And because in the UK we have brought in really important legislation that keeps bats and particularly bat roosts safe, we are seeing actually some quite positive stories. So for lesser horseshoes and greater horseshoes bat species, we're seeing an increase, which is really good. And for some species, we're seeing their populations are quite consistent. But the species that we're worried about are the species that tend to roost in trees, because they're actually harder to find, they're harder to monitor. So whilst we're not sure, you know, we think they might be doing okay, we can't really be certain. Those ones that are particularly of conservation concern because they are hard to monitor. Your pipistrelles that are screaming around all the time, we can count those fairly easily, but things like barbastels, Bechstein's bats, things like that, they're harder to find out how they're doing. But globally, worldwide, bats are generally in decline. This is really concerning because, as I mentioned, they're really important ecosystem engineers. You've got your fruit-eating bats, which disperse the seeds. You've got your pollinating bats that act like bees. And they collect the pollen on their fur. They look adorable. And of course, you've got those insectivorous bats, which control insect populations. So we really do need our bats, and it's worrying that they are in such decline.
Yeah. So what are the main ways people can help bats?
Okay, yeah, so there's lots of different ways to help bats. You can definitely have a look at the Bat Conservation Trust website. There is heaps of information there and loads of different fun things you can try. You can try building bat boxes. You can plant tall, pale coloured flowering plants in your garden. And they're really good because they attract the insects. Basically anything that attracts insects will attract bats and will help bats. Water features are another key one. Again, that encourages insects, which is going to encourage bats. And also spreading the word about how important they are and how they're not scary, you know, they're not spooky creatures, and they're actually really, really important. And I think more people knowing that will make a lot of change as well.
Oh, thank you so much for your time. It was
Thank
really
you.
nice having you.
Cool.
It was great to talk to Maisy about some of our bat species and the things we can do to help. If you're inspired, then you could visit the Bat Conservation Trust webpage to find out more about volunteering with them. So, the next time you see a bat flying up above, don't think of Dracula or Halloween. Think about what they might be saying to each other. Are they chatting about the weather? About insect prices rising? Or perhaps they're just happy to be foraging with each other.
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Oh my god, there is a dog. Hello!
Hello!
Oh!
Yeah, it's fine, don't worry. No, it's all good.
Stick that on the blooper reel.
I missed it, I wasn't recording, I'm upset.
There was lots of bread involved. Hello, doggo! Hi! This is amazing. This is the best thing to happen to Naturewatch ever. Hello! Oh, spooked.
This will be an after credits. Oh, he's back! Hello, hi!
So cute.